What I do is pretty unique in as much as the specific focus on SMEs and installing structure and execution and repeatability. There's not many other people that have the same level of depth of knowledge in this particular space, apart from in this conversation. When I met Philip, it was like I was speaking to another version of me with the depth of knowledge that he had in the SME space and sales structure. And so in this conversation, what you'll find is his journey in terms of the practical implementation of building a sales machine. And he's not just talking about it, like he's really done it. Like he's built a company to tens of millions in revenue, sold it, and he's now doing it again. And what's fascinating about that is you've got all of the lessons learned from the larger organization, and he's now repeating it, and he's able to do it really fast. He's made a big dent in the market that he's going after. And in this conversation, we get to not just find out what is his approaches and tactics, but also we then extrapolate that to, well, what's the practical takeaway? For everyone else that's listening to this, what can they do now based on those lessons that have been learned? Enjoy the conversation. It's really valuable. I think you're going to love it. Philip, welcome to Sales Traction.
Thanks, Oliver. Delighted to be here.
In preparation for this conversation, I'm always excited, but there was a number of reasons as to why I was particularly excited. Firstly, because if what Sales Velocity does is it focuses on structure, what Success.co does is it emphasizes the installation of that structure with EOS. And then not only that, but your background from when we were having the pre-briefing conversation, you're also very familiar with sales frameworks with the likes of the sales acceleration formula, predictable revenue, like all of those classics as well. So it's a very unique intersection of knowledge that you have that I also share. So I think within this conversation, there's going to be lots of cool different areas that we're going to go down. But the first area that I want to jump into is, I'll be honest, when I first saw Success.co, I was thinking, why? It was like, there's already a few players in the market. You've got Traction Tools, you've got 90, you've got Stretty, you've got a good number of tools. So I'm really curious to get your take as to, well, what was the gap that you initially saw in the market? What was the impetus, and how did we get to where we are now?
Yeah, and you're right. At first glance, I think it can feel a little bit confusing, in terms of the amount of players that are out there already or that have been established in the EOS software space. We want to go to understand why we built Success. We probably got to go back into 2017 when we introduced the entrepreneurial operating system EOS at our previous software business called Teamwork.com. It's a project management software similar to Asana, Rake, Monday, ClickUp, etc. out there. And in 2017, we were wildly successful. We were growing revenues 50% year over year. We almost doubled in team size that year, and we just didn't know really why. We were a basket case when it came to accountability around measurables or KPIs that we were tracking, around setting goals for each quarter or even for the year, right? And I think we did lack a common vision as well that we could align the business under. So we engaged with an EOS implementer at the time, worked with him on building our vision and building some of that structure out. And that put a lot of manners on us. We initially did everything on spreadsheets. That was kind of my job to build out templates for the meetings and for our scorecards where we tracked our KPIs on a weekly basis. That didn't really scale. We grew from 100 to 200 people in 2018 and then doubled again to 350 in 2019. Wow. So it was rapid growth, and managing everything on spreadsheets just didn't make sense. So we did go out, we looked at software options at the time. Just builders everywhere, we were just unimpressed with the lack of integrations they had into the tools that we were using every day, like mobile apps, calendars, project management software, obviously, as well, for to-dos that came out of our meetings. So we decided economically it didn't make sense to go with one of the established players at the time. We needed a simple structure to standardize our meetings, to build kind of vision, VTO, vision traction organizer, as they call it in EOS lingo, and the accountability chart, kind of the org chart on steroids, right? These were tools that we simply built for ourselves internally. And we realized, though, that some of our customers, we had 20,000 customers at Teamwork at the time, were actually running on EOS as well. So we launched this tool as a free tool to the market, tried to go for a license agreement with EOS Worldwide to use their terminology, just weren't really successful. But what this did was it actually, this tool never got the love it deserved, in my view, right? It was just a free tool that we had out there.
As every parent says.
Yeah. But it grew organically over the years, and we had thousands of monthly active users actually on it. And when a couple of things came together in 2024, our CEO at Teamwork at the time and my co-founder for Success now, Peter, he stepped down as Teamwork CEO. I kind of got burned out. He's a programmer at heart. His passion is programming, and couldn't do that for a number of years. Obviously, running a $35-40 million SaaS business. And he stepped down, started developing, found a great technology, started developing a little bit again, and called me up. And he was like, "Hey, Phil, I think we should look at this EOS software space again. I think there's an opportunity here for very simple software that's super intuitive, really easy to adopt, that has the integrations we were looking for back in the day, and that stays EOS pure as well." And we looked at it. We looked at all the Trustpilot reviews for the competition, 90 traction tools at Bloom now, Steady as well. We looked at the G2 reviews, like what was out there, and we looked at our own tool that we had built, right? And talked to a couple of people in there. And that was really a proof point to say, well, there's an opportunity here in this market, because we did see the competition veering away from EOS purity a little bit over those years. Like they started renaming certain things and implementing functionality that EOS implementers, for example, wouldn't teach as part of the process. And then the technology as well, it hadn't progressed as much as we thought it would have, right, since 2019, since we actually looked at the major player in the market at the time. So we built an MVP, sat down, built an MVP, worked like dogs to get this out there at the EOS Worldwide conference. Because we had really good relationships from the conversations we had back in 2020 with EOS Worldwide's leadership team, it took us literally 24 hours to get the license agreement with them to use the technology. So yeah, I think it was a little over 24 hours. We were the fastest company to sign a license agreement with EOS Worldwide. Just because we had built those relationships, they were actually using our tool a little bit internally for their own accountability chart, because it was super simple and straightforward to do it. And that's what they really valued. So that gave us a proof point, and to be honest, we've seen like rapid growth ever since we kind of launched in that market.
Wow, amazing story. I think if I was in your position, or if you were a client, I think, and you were at that sort of precipice moment, do we go, do we not go? Obviously, in order to launch, it's not free. Like it's a pretty hefty investment, so you got to have a reasonable amount of certainty. And I suppose in your scenario, it's not like you're going after it's not an empty market. You've got those that are going from zero to first tool, and that's one part of the market, and the other part of the market is one tool to another tool. And in order for it to be a substantial business, you've got to get a lot of people to switch from one tool to the other. Did you have like enough confidence prior to that point that, yeah, do you know what? I actually think a lot of people are going to switch, because that's not a obvious point here. That's not a 10% better. Like people won't switch for 10%. It has to be significantly better. Like, did you have a higher level of confidence in that before going, or was it, we'll figure it out as we go?
100%. And funny enough, like we even had people switch from the major play in the market to our free tool, right at the time, which to me didn't really make sense because the functionality obviously wasn't there. But that was really a proof point to go, yes, there's an opportunity here. Like people are looking for simplicity, and we've seen it on all the reviews, right, for the competition as well. Like there was words used like clunky or slow or not really intuitive, right? And that was something that we saw, okay, if we really focus on the UI, UX of the platform, first of all, as one of our 3 pillars, I guess, the integrations that people are looking for, like it always made sense to us to work on your business in a business operating software like ours or any other, right? And work in the business in your CRM, accounting tool, etc., right? But you need data that synchronizes between the two of them. And that's what we built from the get-go. Mobile apps as well, like, you know, those players didn't have mobile apps for years. And that was the number one thing actually that people were requesting for. So that's something we launched with. And then we made it super easy for people to switch as well. So initially it was not really scalable. Like we almost copied and pasted data, right, from one tool to another. I was sitting there for days trying to migrate certain data.
I hope I don't get any more customers.
Yeah, truly. Like, it was brutal. But then we built importers and exporters. So people could actually, and at this point, people can auto sync their data within 10 minutes. Like, they can log in, sync up both accounts and see their data funnel over. So we solved it through technology, which was great, right? To really overcome that obstacle of, okay, I love your software, but it's so hard. Like, it's a pain to switch. Like, I want to bring my data. How do I do this, right? The benefit as well is, like, our app does feel familiar. When you're coming from the competition, it does feel familiar because we're using the terminology, the tools, obviously, that you've used in other tools as well. We solved it through different kind of design patterns. We have this principle called "Don't make me think" internally. If we do make you think as a user, we're kind of failing you.
I've got that book.
Yeah, it's a great book, actually, as well, Steve Krug. And it's still applicable. Like, it's been written in the 2000s when all these mobile apps and web apps came out, but it's still relevant to this day with AI even. I think those core principles, how people actually look at a page, how they follow a page, that's always going to be the same. So that's what we're really, really invested in on. And then EOS Purity as well. And that's where our primary go-to-market channel, for now at least, which is going through referrals from EOS implementers that teach a process to their clients and might recommend our software. That's what really resonates with them, that we stick to the process. We kind of project how they teach the process in the session room with the client into the software and align kind of the meeting flow, etc.
I just want to take one hop back. So if we're saying, so the journey is, okay, we've got this tool, we think it's good, we have a high enough level of confidence that we want to take it to market. What was then the game plan? Like the sales war plan, if you like, on how are we actually going to take this thing, which we believe in, but we equally know that everyone else is looking at the market and thinking that it's saturated, even if ours is actually better. What's the game plan of how do we actually then break in? What was your thinking there? I know it's implementers, but there's also a big messaging piece, because it can't just be, it's another one. So what was the thinking there?
So we said, what we landed on, we're probably going to change that tagline at some stage because it's not really meaningful, we realized, to so many people. But what we landed on was the next generation software for EOS. Like, we want to take over here with really good technology, with the integrations, with AI embedded kind of into the platform as well. All the latest tech that the competition wouldn't have, right? That 10x feature, as you described earlier, that 10x kind of value add, right? That we could provide. That was the one thing. The other one was we actually worked with people from the previous tool, right, that we had built, customers there, as well as EOS implementers in the run up to our launch. So we actually developed the product with them, and build out certain sponsors and champions, I guess, even right from the get-go in that process before we even launched, before the product was live. We actually had, I think, 30 or 40 beta customers. We talked about 50 EOS implementers at that time to see what are the struggles with the existing softwares that they do recommend. How can we solve this better? And we put in place from the get-go a product advisory panel of end users, integrators, more operations kind of people, and EOS implementers as well. So that combination kind of formed early adopters from the get-go and early kind of champions from the get-go that would advocate for us in the community.
Got it. In order to assemble the 50 or so implementers in the first place, that doesn't happen by chance. People don't just say, yeah, can I be on your project? So what was the process there? Like, how did you manage to do that? You must have seeded the market with relationships you had prior or something to that effect.
Yeah, both, a combination of that. So we used our own implementer, Dean. Actually, he's based in the UK. He was one of the first implementers in Europe, actually, when EOS kind of spilled over into the outside of the States. And he is a well-known kind of person in the community, well-respected person in the community. He's a true friend to this day. He still supports us tremendously. And he was the one kind of, advocating for us in the community, at least in the European community, and made some introductions into the US community as well. Then we had connections to EOS Worldwide's leadership. We actually engaged with them. Mark O'Donnell, for example, he's a very big techie, loves AI, loves the latest tech. So we could get him on board and get his feedback actually as well. And some referrals to people we should probably talk to in the run up to our launch. So that's how it formed, more from like people, networks that we already knew, and going from there through referrals, kind of word of mouth, going, hey, can you introduce us to certain people? And that's how we formed the product advisory panel as well, with some people that were frustrated or upset with the existing software options, and that said, look, I love your approach. I love you guys actually as well. Like the idea that you have, the energy you bring to the space. And that's how we formed those relationships on the early panel.
So if I was to extract an insight from that, it's not just people would refer, it's effectively like super connectors. So if it was to be the likes of Dean, the first one in, very well connected, very well respected, referrals from someone like that can go far further and far higher than just the average person down the street. Same again with Mark O'Donnell, obviously the CEO of EOS Worldwide. Like a referral from him and who he knows is going to go far further than just an average person down the street. So I think that's, if we're looking to extract what were the key strands of DNA, if you like, that were really able to carry it far early on, that definitely sounds like a couple. Okay, so what I then want to segue into from there is, I suppose it's a nice tee up there actually, referrals. So when we talk about growing a business, we talk about, we want to do it with, many people say referrals, and that's both in the tech space, also very much within the professional services space. And a lot of founders that I speak to, and if I ask, how do you get your business? They go, word of mouth, referrals.
Yeah.
The challenge with that is that it seems like an uncontrollable variable. It seems like I am at an effect of other people talking about me, and I'll just sit and wait by the phone and hopefully it rings. With you, it sounds like it's been far more intentional. So I'm really curious to learn and understand, like, what does that actually mean for referrals to become a controllable variable?
Yeah, and I would challenge, right, the fact that it's nothing that you can control. I think you can definitely control referrals very much. The challenge that we faced was, well, people are busy, right? And obviously, but people are also, 90% of people out there, I would say, or 95% of people out there are actually willing to help too, if you ask. And that's the key thing. I think a lot of people just don't ask. And you have to ask. We've heard it over and over again from people that they love our product. If there's anything, they can help with, just let us know, right? And we did let them know. Some of them, we did let them know. We probably still don't do it enough, to be honest. When we have really good conversations with partners that we already work with, hey, can you refer us to, or can you introduce us to XYZ, right, in your area? We build a database of implementers, EOS implementers, referral partners. And we split them into buckets of unaware, they've never really talked to us. They might be aware of us and somehow, right, that we're around, but they've never really engaged with us. Then aware, these are the ones that we showed the product to, send a couple of resources to, but they haven't referred anybody yet. And then referring, these are the ones that we really work with, that are actively referring clients. And we treat them a little bit differently in terms of the approach that we take with them, in terms of messaging, frequency of outreaches, etc. But with them, it's all about consistency. It's all about those asks, especially the referring ones where we have really good relationships. Going back to what we just talked about earlier, those key influencers, right? Making sure we kind of focus on those first, because their referral to other refer partners obviously has more weight. So really building a structured approach to how we go from one person to another, or another three people, etc., and from them to another three people. The community isn't huge. It's in our space, there's 900 EOS implementers out there. We want to talk to all of them ideally, and we do know not everyone is going to jump on board and start referring us, but I think once we get in front of them, we've gotten some really good responses so far. So that is the goal. And you have to ask. That's the key thing. 95% of people out there, I think, are really willing to help if you do ask.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that jump to mind for me there. I remember when, back in the fundraising space, way back when, and a tech company. And the advice that I got was, when speaking to investors, if you ask for investment, you get advice. If you ask for advice, you get investment. And I feel like it's kind of similar here. And I suppose the psychology behind that is how much buy-in do they have to whatever it is that you're doing. I think if it's asking for something straight out the gate, then it's like, ooh, okay. Like if you were to come straight out the gate swinging and ask for a referral versus having the initial buy-in and them have their thumbprint on the product itself, I think it's just a very different dynamic that they have with the company, the tool, and their willingness to recommend. The other thing that you shared, and I see this an awful lot, I think it's a wonderful insight, is oftentimes when it comes to who are our partners or connectors or people that could potentially refer us, most people don't even have a list. Like there are people, but they're not actually ever written down. And then beyond that, there's no structure to those lists. And in fact, what you've mentioned there is one of the things that I always recommend. I refer to it as tiering. You want to have your tier ones, tier twos, tier threes. And the way that you're treating them is fundamentally different. And the way that your tier one, like I'd much rather have 10 really, really, really strong, super connected partners that are over invested in, rather than 100 that are all kind of lukewarm. Like they're very different relationships. One of the things that you mentioned was consistency, because I think a lot of people, when they think of, okay, I'm going to have a partner, this is going to be my partner, I now need to be consistent. Like, what does that actually mean? So for us, what does that mean for you guys?
Yeah, so for us, it means that again, these people are super busy. They're trying to build their own businesses. Yeah. They have, on average, 10 to 15 clients that they manage, right? Software is kind of on the back burner, and referring software, et cetera, is kind of on the back burner. Like we really had to cut through and go through a couple of iterations of this approach to really be respected and become credible, get that credibility in the market as well. So there's a combination of things that we did. One, around consistency. What we're doing is we got to be in front of those people, each bucket, almost every single month. And with a different approach, obviously. The referring ones, we give updates on their clients, right? We tell them how their clients are doing. Even if a client is struggling, we let them know, and we make a plan on how can we help this client, right? Because a client struggling in our software is potentially a client struggling adopting the EOS process as a whole. So it might be a risk even to the implementer. So we help them kind of retain clients that way. The other ones is the aware ones, going from aware to referring. Like really, they're already familiar with the product. It's more around the updates that we're making, the new relationships that we were able to form, maybe getting from a referring implementer, getting an intro to an aware one again to kind of build that relationship, I guess, with them. And then with the unaware ones, who've never looked at us, right? How can we get them to talk to us? And we know they're busy. We know they might be with another, competitor of ours, and that's fine for now. But really trying to create that urgency and that pain of at least looking at us, right? Mm-hmm. And there's a couple of things I think which are truly value about this community as well. One of EOS Worldwide's values is help first, and that is the approach we're taking here too. So we've launched a huge survey with about 100 implementers that not even, like, it wouldn't be referring or aware ones that we work with. It would even be ones that never talk to us, right? We filled in the survey. And it's all around how to build an EOS implementer practice and business from a business development point of view. What's working, what's not working. How many holidays do you take a year? Do you love what you're doing? What's your mental health state? What are you struggling with? How do you overcome those struggles? And it formed this amazing state of the EOS implementer report that we want to own at least annually, right? And the feedback we've gotten on it was tremendous. So this is something that we launched to the entire community, but I think the value was tremendous for especially getting into the unaware bucket of referral partners, potential referral partners. And then the other thing that we did just recently is we launched a podcast on the back of the results that we got there. We call it Practice Builder. And we talked to some of those key influences in the community that a lot of people look up to, talk about their journeys, first of all, as an EOS implementer, but also really practical advice on how do you get clients? How do you retain clients? What are the biggest obstacles? How, biggest challenges that you have in a session room? Practical things around your accounting. When you should hire a virtual assistant or an assistant, right, to your business. Like all these practicalities of running a better EOS implementer practice. That is something we just launched recently on the back of the results that we've gotten. And it's been well perceived so far. So help first, because we do believe you're going to get the intros to potential clients or other referrer partners through that approach.
Wow.
And it's generally, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, there's two things. We're going to extrapolate a couple of key takeaways there. There's two things that jump out to me. Number one is very deliberate and not left to chance. This is not, there's a list of people, fingers crossed, hope they like me. This is, I am proactively working a network. And then the other thing, I suppose, in the wrapper of help first is how is it that we are giving value but playing the long game? Like,
Yeah.
this is not a lead magnet. This is not a quick hit. What is my conversion rate from helping a couple of people? This is, I am going to give, and I'm going to give, and I'm going to give, and I am going to give. And then over time, there's so much value that's being given, just naturally, the work then tends to come back and there tends to be reciprocation. As long as it is genuine value and not genuine value with immediate expectation of something coming back. Because I think people can smell that a mile off, can't they? And they're like, I don't want your help next time, thank you. Like, if I know that it's give with this hand and immediately take with that hand, it's a completely different game. But I think there's a couple of really good takeaways in there. So my question then is, if we're going to move now on to the next frontier, is we know why it was a good idea. We know how we're going to get into the market. We've then kicked off with going into the market. Yeah. You're still you. How do you scale it? Because relationships are made between people. So if you've got a wonderfully vested set of relationships in the market, you obviously don't want to be stuck in that seat for forever, and you can't scale beyond that point. So how do you then get out of that seat?
Yeah, so I think there's always going to be involvement in that seat, because key relationships, I think, is one of the roles any CEO should probably have, right? With particular referral partners, important clients as well. We follow the philosophy as well. You got to get out there and meet those key people that you're working with at least once or twice a year. I think that's super important. And that's what we did just recently. We did a roadshow throughout the US. Like, we started in Boston, New York, New Orleans. I'm going to go back to Chicago very soon. So to really meet those people that have been tremendous support for us, and see, what can we improve? Workshop out product, as well as the relationship side of things, customer journey, making customers successful, onboarding, etc. We're still in early stages, and that's something we need to refine. But I think, to get out of that seat, it's going to require, obviously, somebody, first of all, a really good playbook around what are the activities that we do, right? To really document that process that you can then hand over and hire or onboard somebody new into. Really good metrics, and making sure you're consistent on those. I think we still have a way to go there, to make sure that when it comes to, one, the referral side of things, but also when it comes to demoing, selling, that's still what I do, right? Primarily in the business, that we hold our trial to paid kind of sign up conversions, our demo or trial to demo to, or trial to qualification, demo, qualification to demo, qualified lead to demo, and then demo to kind of paid customer, that we hold those conversion rates consistently. And I think that's a good indicator then to go, well, there's a process in place that seems to be running, a playbook in place that seems to be working. This is something we can hand over. And then, frankly, I think it is around looking at your calendar as well, and making sure, if other areas of the business are kind of falling down because you can't commit as much resource and as much time to them, it is time to get help. And that's what I realized just recently, where I was just on my calendar from morning till evening. It's just demos, sales calls, right? And I can't get anything else done. And it's a good problem to have, to be honest, but it's not sustainable. So that's when these are the early signals, I think, to go, all right, it's time to get somebody in. But I think in order to make that person successful as well, you got to have the process proven out. You got to have the messaging proven out, your positioning proven out. And that's something that we focused on, Peter and myself in particular, in the last year and a half that we've been working on this, to make sure it resonates and we do keep those conversion rates throughout the funnel consistent. And that's when, once you got those playbooks built, it's about looking for the right person to come in and take this to the next level.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things there is people often talk about founders getting out of the sales seat.
Yeah,
and I think that's probably just because of the space that we play in. It's like the 1 to 20 million typically. But in order to get to the 1, typically the way you get there is founder-led sales. So that is a very key part. And something that you touched on, which I'm curious to unpack a little bit more, beyond the calendar is really busy, there is value initially in the founder, tons of value of the founder being the initial one that's spearheading the sales. So I think my question is, how do you know, beyond being busy, how do you know when it's ready? Like, how do you know where it's like, okay, I can now take my hands off the wheel?
I think you should be scientific about this, right? You got to really look at your conversion metrics, and I think if they are holding up with the playbooks that you've built, with the process that you follow, it is time to pass that on. That's the really indicators. Like when you look at the trial to demo conversions and then demo to paid in particular, we keep it simple that way, right? We don't do much qualification, to be honest. At this point, we don't specialize as much in our sales journey or buyer journey at this point. It'll come later at a later stage, but I think we want to keep it simple for the buyer as well. They don't have to go through an SDR to get qualified and then get passed on to sales or something, right? We just keep it simple. It's me talking to them, qualifying what's the size of the opportunity here? What's their budget? When are they ready to kind of commit? Biggest pains, obstacles, etc. So almost following the MetPick kind of sales qualification, but more in a subtle way that's kind of flowing into a natural conversation with people. I do have to say as well, like for early adopters that we're having for the product, they love talking to the founder as well and having that direct relationship, right? So that's a big value add. And the story, like it's obviously different if you tell it from your own perspective, why we built this versus somebody who's just joined the team, right? So that is something that's probably going to be the hardest bit, to be honest, to pass on to somebody, to really be able to show the passion, for what we're doing in the same way as you would as a founder. You're probably not going to have that 100%, but really coaching people on this to embed our story, why we actually built success as well into the sales conversation. That's going to be important. But to me, I think the indicators of the playbook is working and my calendar is full. Beyond that, it is the conversion metrics that once you're humming, once you've got your positioning nailed and your messaging and your kind of sales pitch, right, that you keep those conversion metrics throughout whatever simple funnel you've built for yourself in the early stage, that you keep those conversion metrics up and consistent. And that's a really good indicator to go, yeah, we're ready to pass this on to somebody.
And for those people that are watching or listening and thinking, okay, playbook, that sounds good. For you, what does a playbook actually look like? And what is your process? Sorry, compounded question.
Yeah.
And what is your process for building and iterating? Because it's not like you're a super well-established business and we just need to reflect what's already happening. It's also a case of iteration. So it's documenting the iteration as well. So I'm curious to get your perspective there.
Yeah, so we looked at, obviously, with all the research that we've done, right, and we followed kind of a framework that April Dunford in her book, Obviously Awesome. It's all about positioning and it gives you really good frameworks of how to identify your position in the market compared to competition, but also the pains that your buyers might have, right? The personas that you're actually targeting. Like that is all the groundwork that you have to do first. And then the messaging itself and your sales pitches, your sales conversation, forming that will become much easier. So what we did was we spent a lot of time looking at the competition, talking to people, obviously. Why would you buy this thing, right? What's the value you're getting out of it? Who are you? What are your metrics? What do you get evaluated on? What are you trying to do as a business within your business? And that formed kind of the sales script, the initial sales script that we built. And then we road tested it over and over and over again in hundreds of conversations where we talked to people that were coming from another software versus people that came from nothing, spreadsheets or pen and paper, right? Yeah. It's a different approach to both of them, actually. We can segment that out as well. But we road tested the playbook. We actually sparred, with each other as well. Like Peter, my co-founder, and I, we would join each other's calls and give feedback to each other in those calls. There's great technology out there now with Gong or other softwares to desktop and whatnot, right? That can actually help you. Like you give it your sales script and it's going to coach you on the back of it. I think this is something that we'll implement once we have a sales team implemented as well. We're just in the process. We just hired actually somebody, a sales customer success rep, full cycle, kind of customer life cycle rep. And just to keep that process, that standards kind of up, technology can really help you there once you have your playbooks and sales scripts tested. But for us, it was really refining, writing it down with all the prep work that we've done around positioning, the market that we're operating in, and then sparring with each other, right? Constantly through hundreds of calls, giving feedback to each other, refining the sales script. And I think we've got it nailed somewhat now, but it's ever changing. I mean, this is something that even once we have an established team in place, I think this is something we would continue doing, right, on the team, at least on a bi-weekly or monthly basis, that you spar, you give feedback to each other, you refine the sales playbook, you talk about what's working, what's not working in terms of the messaging. So it's an ongoing evolution, I guess, of building that out, but it's important to have, you know, a playbook in place and have a sales script in place that you can actually follow and coach and train people on.
You are speaking my love language.
Awesome. Yeah.
Honestly, so many, I've worked with hundreds of clients that have, their perspective is, we need a playbook. Like initially, I don't know what a playbook is, education, what a playbook is. We need one of those. And then it's treated as, it's a milestone I need to get to. And then once I'm there, I can then forget about it. Whew, thank God we've got that done. But what you've illustrated there wonderfully well is it is a live, ever-changing, always moving beast that you need to constantly keep updated, constantly be role practicing. A document that was created once a year ago and never got used, you might as well have not created it. Zero value that's added there. And I think whether you're a startup or if you're an established business, all the while the market is changing, there's new competitors, there's new customers, there's new people coming in. Like everything is always changing. And so if your system for generating opportunities, winning opportunities, and growing the accounts once you got them, if that isn't also updating, then you're going to be falling behind. And if you don't have that for, here's a nice comparison, for that playbook that you've now created, imagine you didn't create that, then you hired someone in, and then they're then spending a year, or more than a year really, if it took you a year, they're going to take way longer than that for them to try and figure out the exact same thing. And that is commonly the status quo. That is the status quo of the majority of sales organizations when it comes to how is it that we're building a sales machine. It's just come in, here's a call, watch me for a minute, and off you go. And what I really love about what you shared there is that it's just so far the opposite. You know, it's very much an engineering mindset rather than a, hey, let's figure it out as we go mindset. And I think from there, the success has been evident. I think it's a great proof point. So I think where I want to round it off then is then starting to move into, that's been your journey so far. We've spoken a little bit about bringing in the first, whether it's an SDR or a salesperson. What do you look for there? How are you applying that same engineering mindset to that first hire or first couple of hires? What are you looking for and how do you assess it?
So in terms of the interviewing process, that's an engineered kind of process as well. I tried it out years ago when we started hiring sales reps in the US, and it leans heavily on what Mark Roberge did at HubSpot and the book you referred to in the beginning of our conversation, right? The Sales Acceleration Formula. I think it's a really, really great book for tactical insights and practice advice on how to hire really great salespeople and how to coach them and train them actually as well. So Mark refers to the scorecard in the hiring process, right? And they did a lot of research at what were the traits that a really successful salesperson in HubSpot did. And I think that's not just relevant to sales. You could apply this to other areas in the business, in hiring as well. Mm-hmm. But at our point in our journey, obviously there's still things that are changing constantly. So you need people that are really adaptable, first of all, right? They got to be comfortable with change. They got to have prior success in the areas that you're actually selling into. Like if we hired an enterprise sales rep right now, they would not be successful here. Like we're in the SMB space. It's tactical. We cannot spend, it's not a long sales process, 30 days, 45 days total, right? To close a deal. Low transaction kind of volume, so we cannot spend so much time as we would with an enterprise client, for example, where you have to navigate through an organization. It's a completely different sales approach. So they have to have prior success in the areas that you're trying to tap into. Then it's coachability. I think that's probably the biggest trait, to be honest. I would go with it is if they do come with prior experience, certain processes that are in their head. We might do things a little differently over here, and coaching them on being able to coach them on their strengths, their weaknesses, our own processes. I think somebody being able to pick that up, that is going to be a game changer, obviously, if they're able to do that really fast and effective. And then lastly, it's a little bit about intelligence as well. I mean, our product isn't too technical, isn't too complex, but somebody who can really pick up, certain workflows or a little bit more complex processes around integrations, etc. That's important too. I think a combination of those things with prior successes, coachability, adaptability, that's the traits you want to look for. And the way we do that is we've got in our interviewing process certain questioning obviously embedded into that. We have semi-structured interview guides that we have 3 interview stages actually to get this right with different people on the team. A scorecard towards at the end of each interview where we score people on those traits, right, how they did. And then a role play as well towards the final stage of the interview where one, we kind of get a gist of, how are they presenting a product? How are they selling? What's their capability there? How are they prospecting? How are they qualifying, etc. But then also we give feedback on the role play and ask them around questions around coachability. Like, if, we like this, or if you were in a different situation, what would you have done differently? And you get an idea of somebody, can they pick this up and can they actually act on your feedback really, really quickly in the situation? Those are really good indicators. So again, it's more of an engineered or data driven kind of approach to the hiring process and hiring on those traits that we were looking for.
Yeah, I used to, when hiring coaches, assess, and you sort of just touched it on the end, something to echo, something that I used to do when hiring coaches, because I also really cared about coachability, especially if you're coming into a somewhat senior role where there can be a little bit more ego or bravado, or I know what I'm doing. Like, you may well do, but I also want you to be very coachable. And so what I would often do is have them deliver a session, or the sales equivalent would be have them deliver a pitch. And I didn't care how good it is. Even if it was like 10 out of 10, I would tear the thing down and I'd tell them that they need to do it again.
Yeah, love that. I love that.
I don't care how good it is. And then those that would go, okay, that's really good feedback. Thank you. I'm looking forward to doing that again. And then they do it and they check in between the first session and the next session. And they want to get feedback in between, or they're reaching out to other members of the team. Like, that's our person. That's our person. I know you're going to go to the moon. But those people that killed it, got bad feedback or constructive feedback, and then we're like all uppity about it, that's not going to fit very well. That's not going to fit very well. So I think that's a wonderful point to round it off on. So Philipp, thank you so much for coming on to Sales Traction. As a round off here, how can people find out more about you, connect with you, and also find more out about success.co?
So I'm on LinkedIn, all right? Philipp Maucher, Maucher. You'll find me on LinkedIn. Just feel free to connect. Happy to jump on a call and bounce off any ideas, right? I'm always keen to learn from other like-minded or people in the same space and same situation as us. We are obviously on success.co as well. If you go to success.co, you'll find me there. You'll find my colleagues there. You can check out the product if you wanted to too, obviously. So we'd love your feedback. These are probably the biggest channels to get in touch.
Excellent. Thank you, Philipp.
Awesome.